as the man behind the National Braai Day, with so many books on how to master a good meal cooked over fire. Well, Jan Braai is now back with a new offering that is packed with braai recipes that don't rely on meat, titled Vegetarian Option. Now, Jan's book contains a variety of delicious vegetarian options such as burgers, braaibroodjies, potjies, curries, breads and side dishes. And to tell us more about this, the braai enthusiast joins us now via Zoom. A very good morning to you, Jan. Thank you so much for joining us, and a warm welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure having you this morning, Jan. Now, tell me, just balance me quick here. How is a braai without meat called braai?
Well, to my mind, a braai is something where we as South Africans gather around fires, wooden fires, of course, not gas barbecues. So once there's a wooden fire and South Africans are gathered around that fire cooking food, that is a braai. And over the years, all of us started assuming it's got to be meat on the fire, but I think vegetables is fine as well. As you mentioned, the core thing that I do is I call on all South Africans to unite around fires on 24 September every year, the National Heritage Day or the National Braai Day initiative on Heritage Day. That is my project. So if we're going to try and unite, and I think we all agree that South Africa dearly needs a bit of social cohesion and nation building. Now, if we're going to unite the whole country around braais, then obviously the vegetarians need to be, or let's not even call it vegetarians, people who choose not to eat meat for whatever reason need to be welcome at that fire. So let's do a book for them as well. And the name, the vegetarian option, is simply a bit of tongue-in-cheek. Whenever you go to a restaurant, then the waiter would always tell you, or somewhere on the menu there would be the vegetarian option, and that's something we've never had at a braai fire. So I thought, let's get that book out there and say at braais there's also a vegetarian option.
And I suppose that so many people will find it very, very difficult, to grapple with a braai without the meat. And just tell us about the idea to put together a meatless braai book comes from.
The idea comes from a good friend of mine since school days, whose wife is a vegetarian, and he braais delicious food from some of my other books often, and she always complains that there's not enough diversity and tasty things for her at the braai fire. So he said, why don't you do a vegetarian book? Now, my first reaction was, obviously this will never work, because Jan Braai and a vegetarian option, does this really gel? But then I gave it some thought, and I thought this is a fantastic idea, because for more than 15, it's now 17 years ago that we started the National Braai Day project, we've always said this is to unite all South Africans at a fire. So clearly we need to be more visible in welcoming people who choose to not eat meat at the fire. So then I just started looking at your typical things. Of course, there's a chakalaka and a putupap and a braaibroodjie, all the normal things there on the screen. Now you can see a pizza, so that's obviously 2 pizza bases in a closed hinged grid, and you toast it over the fire. You've got some filled butternut, you've got risottos, you've got wonderful curry potjies. Of course, it's currently very cold everywhere in South Africa, so I think the baked bean bunny chow, for example, there's a butternut lasagna there. So a lot of things you can do in your potjie. Also a lot of recipes and techniques how to get vegetables and non-meat options, like different types of breads, different things you can do with mealie-pap, all of it on the fire. Yeah. So I think for the meat eater who still wants to eat meat, can see this as a book filled with fantastic side dish recipes.
Yeah. And just take us through the inspiration behind some of the delicious meatless recipes that you share in this book.
Well, personally, I like curry a lot. I grew up in Cape Town, and I like to visit Durban, because these are the 2 areas where, you get a lot of spicy food on the menu. And I think when you're going into the curry direction, it's also a very cost-effective way to make your food quite tasty. So that's why I like that. So that's the one direction where I went to a lot. And then in terms of Europe, for me, Italy is a great inspiration for a lot of my recipes. That's where we get the pasta meals and the risottos. And that also works extremely well in a potjie on your fire. You can also see there's some bruschetta in there. And then lastly, fruit and vegetables. When you expose them to the direct searing heat of a fire, the natural sugars that occur in fruit and vegetables, it caramelizes. So your food is picking up the smoky flavor from the wood and fire, and it also becomes even sweeter without you adding any other artificial sweeteners. So you're really making your fruit and vegetables taste nicer when you braai them.
Now, the braaibroodjie is one of the vegetarian dishes you consider to be the most popular braai meal in South Africa. Tell us more about this meal.
Yeah, the braaibroodjie, we've all seen it at braai. Some of us eat it every day, some of us sometimes. Now, the braaibroodjie is normal, cheap shop toasted bread. You take 2 slices, you fill that with cheese, tomatoes, onions, chutney, butter on the outside. You put it in a hinge grid, so a grid that closes to keep the whole thing together. You don't make one braaibroodjie at a time. You make many because everybody loves them. Okay. And a braaibroodjie should not be confused with the toasted cheese. It just tastes completely different. When that bread starts to toast on the fire, your aim with the braaibroodjie, when you've got this sandwich that you built with the cheese, the tomato, the onion, the chutney on the inside, that's the one on screen now. You toast it. Your aim is to have it golden brown on the outside and the cheese melted in the middle, and then you've got perfection. To my mind, it's the single greatest meal at a braai fire. I think it's right up there with boerewors in terms of which one you see most often at braais. But I think a lot of people are closet vegetarians and they're just braaiing meat because they're trying to get to the braaibroodjie.
Now, what's interesting, Jan, is that you are not a vegetarian. So what sparked this passion and love for vegetarian dishes?
Yes, that's why I think I can't put it down to trying to be politically correct. It's just trying to be honest. Why I call it a book for people who choose not to eat meat, because I think there's a difference between that and a true militant vegetarian or vegan. I think it's whichever one you are, it's absolutely fine. But I think sometimes you just choose not to eat meat. Like, I don't want to eat meat every single day. And I think it doesn't mean that if you choose not to eat meat that the food has to be boring. You can still do amazing food. And obviously the upper echelon, the crown prince or the throne of amazing food is braai food. That we all know, because the activity of braaiing your food is fun and the food tastes better. So for me, I'm not a vegetarian, but that doesn't mean that every single braai needs to be a competition of who can eat the biggest half a cow on the grid.
And for all the braai-loving South African vegetarians that come to you for pointers on dishes to make for a braai, what advice do you normally give them?
I think it goes wider than simply adding mushrooms and cream. So that is the first thing we need to realize, or extra cheese, because that's if you're panicking and you have to cook for vegetarian the first time, I think everybody runs to mushrooms and to extra cheese and cream. Although those things are amazing in food, there's everything else is out there as well. So I think my advice to the non-meat eater is you can braai absolutely everything. You can even braai chocolate. In this book, there's a chocolate risotto potjie that you can have for dessert. There's an apple tart in a potjie. So I think the bottom line is you can braai everything. There's nothing that doesn't taste better when you braai it.
So what's the next best thing, Jan, that could possibly replace meat, or rather the taste of meat?
No, I don't think that's not the direction that I think we should go into. So let me say it on national TV, I'm not a fan of these fake meats. So when I eat meat, I like real meat that tastes like meat. And when I don't want to eat meat, I'll taste a vegetable that tastes and looks like a vegetable. So if I want to eat a lentil, for example, there's a wonderful recipe for lentil bobotie in the book. Now, I think when you serve the lentil bobotie from that book, most people aren't even going to realize there's no mince in that bobotie. So if I eat lentils, so for example, I'm not going to make some fake meat patty or wors or whatever with the lentil. Same with chickpeas. I'm not going to convert that into a patty that tastes or looks like meat. When I use the chickpeas, there's a wonderful recipe for chickpea curry potjie in the book. And that does service to all these chickpeas that gave their lives to be in that meal. Respect the chickpea. So I think I'm not a guy for over using or manipulating things, even if it's vegetables, that it starts looking and tasting like meat.
All right, Jan, great chatting to you, man.
I still, of course, love meat.
We're out of time, unfortunately, but it's been lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. That was braai enthusiast Jan Braai, and he joined us this morning to unpack his latest book titled The Vegetarian Option.